Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Biz Bites Live. I'm Anthony McMahon from the IT Psychiatrist hosting today, and with me in this session is Rob Bull, all the way up from Hamilton and Plexus Consulting. Welcome, Rob.
Welcome, thank you.
How's things going down there in the mighty Tron?
Oh, mighty Tron, centre of the world. It's going well, and I think everyone's in a good space. I've been out into the wilderness a couple of times, but mainly just hunkering around home.
Nice. Yeah, it's probably the same all over the country. Everyone's getting out when they can, but not doing too much. I've had to shut the windows on this podcast. Earlier, I was doing one, and we had the Air Force doing low level flybys to engage us. So we're making sure that's not going to happen again. Tell me a little bit about Plexus Consulting, some of the stuff you've got on the go there, and some of the ways you're helping your clients at the moment.
Yeah, so Plexus Consulting, I'm all about helping businesses around profitable growth and productivity. So I use lean thinking and how to, getting the mindset of continuous improvement into a business. So that's generally my day job. Obviously, at the moment, there's been a few restrictions, but really just helping my clients at the moment is just making sure they're preparing and planning to get back into a new world order, because it's not a post-COVID, it's a new world order, and so it's more of using this opportunity to change some of the routines that weren't effective last time. So really getting them into the mindset into once they're all back face to face. So that's been the biggest key. And the other one has just been on the end of the phone and being a different voice than the household.
Yeah, just breaking out of your bubble a little bit without breaking it down. A good point in there that post-COVID is not normal. We're not going back to the future. Once this changes, there will be a different way of doing things, and for some time we're going to see physical distancing as the norm. I prefer physical distancing to social distancing because we are still sociable. That'll be the norm. That's going to change the way some businesses do things, and we see it today with supermarkets. They will probably continue to keep some of the practices in place that they've got. We might not be queuing up to shop once we get to level 2, but certainly the way a supermarket runs could be very different.
Yeah, so and it's just chance for businesses to stop and reflect and think about what they are doing in terms of how they work, and even just their point of reason. People's priorities would have changed. So their product or service is still what they need. So there's going to be a whole lot of time over the certain next 2, 3, 4 months of step back, review, and reflect. Are they still relevant?
Yeah, and the model, the product, how much does it reflect what's needed? And I use hand sanitizer as an example in that one as well. You've seen a number of breweries, distilleries, alcohol manufacturers jumping in and switching their production to hand sanitizer. Now, it's great, short-term solution. Is that going to be viable for them long-term? Probably not, unless it's Johnny Walker and it's their red label and they're getting rid of that for hand sanitizer. I can't see anyone else motivating them or moving their business model to only produce hand sanitizer from alcohol. So it's about pivoting back there.
Yeah, and it's just about just keeping relevant. And I think that if they haven't done already, business owners, and certainly in the SME sector, is using this time to reflect of what's really important and what are the stuff that they were doing that felt important but isn't, that taking their eye off the real purpose of what they're good at, or what they're really passionate about, or did they expand too much? All of those questions. I think this is a great time to sort of sit back and restock and reset.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And do you feel there's going to be some organisations that to back the question up a little bit, something I've been talking about with people over the last couple of weeks is that there will be organisations who will find that there were processes, that there were things they were doing up until 4 or 5 weeks ago that they suddenly stopped. and they're now finding that none of that was critical to their business, and therefore they may actually stop doing that forever. Just some of those basic reports they run, or some of the other things that happen within the business that someone feels is important, but it turns out it's not. Do you think that's going to be a change that we'll see as well?
I hope so. I really do hope, and I've been certainly prevalent on LinkedIn as, if not subtle, very overt about asking those questions, right? And using this for the 4 weeks that we've had, 4 a bit weeks that we will have, to use that time to reflect and plan and get your teams on Zoom and have those conversations. And it's not about losing people's roles and jobs. Businesses are always going to be busy, but it's making sure, are we getting the right people doing the right thing? So it is that restock. But what also fears that I've got, and I kind of talked about it in the last couple of days online, is businesses will rush in to just start and try to catch up, as it were, rather than actually spending the time to just reset what the team are wanting to do, and reset the standards, the expectations, and have those conversations before they rush in and pick up the tools and get going again.
Definitely.
So there's a whole range. So it's the pre-planning now is hugely important, but it's that first couple of days. Now we've got a date. When you physically can get back, how are you going to slow down to move fast long term? That's probably my big message.
Definitely, and probably the one that underpins this as well. We've seen overnight from McDonald's, where lockdown, or the Prime Minister announced the plans for moving out of lockdown in a phased transition, and had previously said that what that would mean, and that companies that had drive-through or click and collect could open. So McDonald's obviously fits into the model of drive-through, and they've come out and gone, don't expect us to be ready to go on the first day, because we've got this entire supply chain around us that needs to start up again. They need to get the food and the supplies and the people and everything back in. And I think that's a really interesting point. As a company of the size and with the resources of McDonald's, they don't expect to be open immediately.
No, and I think it's the mindset. Even 24 hours, nearly, what's the time? Yeah, nearly 24 hours since we've had the dates released of going down to level 3, certainly in New Zealand, that's not the goal. The goal is level 2, level 1. That's when the economy really kicks off. And I just some big businesses to slow down and take their time to prepare. What were the things that you're firefighting before? Fix those before you get really busy. I think last week I was using the analogy, it's like learning to swim now, because when that tsunami comes at level 2, not level 3, not next week, when the tsunami comes, that's the bad time to learn how to swim.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
So fix those little problems over the next couple of weeks. Use that to slowly get your engine of your business going and fix all those problems. Get it into that mindset anyway. Because then you're just that little bit ahead of your opposition, I guess, your competitors.
Definitely. It's and you're right. It's, you can't wait for it to happen. We saw it with the companies that already had an e-commerce stream in motion. Were able to adapt a lot quicker to entering lockdown than the ones who hadn't quite got there with e-commerce just yet.
Mm. And I was talking to a colleague last week. We've actually had recent experience in New Zealand around how that we're going to come out of this with Christchurch.
Yep.
But the only difference is this is reasonably national, and it does flow internationally. But from an economy that went from a halt very quickly to and it takes time to rebuild your business, rebuild that whole flow. There are some big challenges. So we've got experience. We need to learn from that. So that's probably a good a few case scenarios to look at what happened the first 2, 3, 6 months post Christchurch.
Definitely, and even more recent than that, and it's something that I used to my advantage in the Full Stream podcast that I've got, Biz Bites. is the Wellington earthquake, or the Kaikoura earthquakes, which impacted Wellington, not to the same extent as Christchurch, obviously, but I know of one company, I was working for them at the time, Bank in New Zealand, who after both those Kaikoura earthquakes, their Wellington head office was out of action. For the first one, it was 18 months. For the second one, it was permanently just closed. They're knocking it down at the moment. So there's lessons there from BNZ as to how they reacted and how they managed through having that loss of sight and that loss of service, and bringing employees back to productivity as well. And you're spot on with the Christchurch earthquakes. They've been a great example of how companies can, resilient companies can continue to operate.
And also, the conversation we had was the support services like Callahan, like NZTE, and all. This is not, unfortunately, this is not the first barbecue that they've been to around this one. So I think New Zealand's in a good place to kickstart all of that support structure, certainly around the SME sector, which lifts most of our economy.
Correct. And it's that flow through as well, is that if you're buying, if people can get out and enter the supply chain or re-enter a supply chain, everyone in that supply chain wins. If they're buying widgets from a company that imports them from another company in Australia or in China, there's the knock-on beneficial economic impact because of the fact that money's entering the economy to start with. So
supply chains and supply chains an interesting one. I was on a webinar the other night. It was about 2 in the morning New Zealand time, so it was a good effort for me. But yeah, it was a bunch of Americans, and they were talking around from a product, process, lean thinking point of view, and supply chain always comes into the conversation. And if we use Deming's philosophy of bringing that supply chain as close as possible, right? So, and I turned that into a bit of a story. I was out going for a walk, run, some exercise the other day, and say if you're making a widget that costs $100, and there's 10 steps in it to make that widget. Now, previously, there might have been one component that cost you $5, but you got it from China.
Yeah.
Right. Buy it from New Zealand, it might cost you $10. So now it's a $105 widget. But if you also looked at your process and the efficiency to, and quite often we can get 10, 15% improvement in a whole, manufacturing process, this is now down to $95 or $96. So actually, if you do both of those things, your supply chain's a lot closer to home, so you're supporting local, but also you don't have lead times on all of those issues. So you don't have cash flow because you can order less because it's right on your doorstep, plus improve your processes. That's the stuff that businesses need to be really, really, really thinking about now. So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
Definitely. And probably a good point in there. Part of New Zealand's challenge with the supply chain has been our distance from raw materials. So we've had to import raw materials to start often. Do you see, and what that's resulted in historically is companies offshoring because it's cheaper to be closer to the raw material than to bring the raw material here. Do you see that we're going to see or do you feel we're going to get a reversal of some of that along the way where companies actually go, you know what, it's still better to be in the economy than outside the economy, and the impacts that could happen with that?
Yeah. Good question. I think if anyone can really guess what the full impact of that, there's a lot smarter people around those kind of economy levels on it. But I really don't think. I think it's probably going to be a balance. My gut feeling is that there are going to be some people that pull back and use this as a story, and clever marketers in 12 months' time going, "Hey, remember this? There was that whole community, and let's buy New Zealand made. Let's support the local providers. All of those kind of things." But unfortunately, I think humans are natural beasts of getting the cheapest and quickest. So there will be some of that behaviour that goes back to the habits that we were doing. So we'll probably go from one extreme, and then there'll be some recentering over time. 2, 3, 4 years.
As people get back to it, and not just that, but we're also not set up as a country at the moment to manufacture everything we need. So we are still going to be importing certain consumer goods, particularly in the electronic area, into New Zealand because they've been made at cost somewhere else. So it does become interesting. I guess there's also within here, and it's something I'm exploring in a post I'm doing, a little bit more longer form post, is the challenges that e-commerce brings for certain models as well. If you've got an established brand and people trust you and buy into you, e-commerce is quite easy to get into. But if you take the supermarket model, for example, where a whole bunch of brands exist in the same location, and people buy a brand because they see it on the shelf or they interact with it on the shelf or whatever, there's promotional activity, take that into an e-commerce environment where the supermarket's controlling it, it makes it very hard for some of these niche or boutique brands to really shine through, doesn't it?
Yeah, so that's just knowing your market and asking the questions, and quite often, had the conversation. Been talking a lot, and we've got time to have these philosophical chats almost. Is businesses just? I guess this goes back to the question. Are you relevant? And businesses going back to the customer and going, what do you really want? But how do you want it, and when do you want it? So it's those fundamental basic questions, right? And we forget to ask that. So these aren't new questions, these aren't new approaches, but I guess this whole environment is, I guess, encouraging or pushing businesses to go back to those core fundamentals and asking those questions, because in the past, the old style, you just keep pushing, push it out, and it'll take care of itself. But niche. I think there will be some interesting communication and marketing strategies out there to really push and get those messages out.
Definitely, and it might be that the marketing budget for some of these companies actually increases. Where previously they relied on visibility in channel, and if we stick with the supermarkets, for a lot of these food manufacturers, just being there was enough. They didn't have to really sell what they did; they just had to be present. If you take that to an online world where customers don't see the brand in front of them, marketing plays a huge role in actually bringing that focus to the front as well.
Yep, and it's been able to deliver as well. I mean, I did go out in the wilderness yesterday and into the supermarket and noticed, it wasn't toilet paper, it was flour this time, that the supermarket was holding a completely different brand than it usually has. And I thought, someone's missing the mark somewhere, or they're not able to deliver. And we're really quick to, there's no loyalty, right?
No.
Loyalty is being able to provide service. Supermarket needs to provide service. There's obviously one brand's doing better than the other. Well done, So
availability and cost, like you say, they know what the customers want. They know the customers right now want flour. So what's available is going to be the big one. And then, as you say, cost, customers will go for the cost on some products over others. So it's certainly an interesting time ahead. And like I say, it's something I'm exploring a little bit of with the emergence of the first dark store in New Zealand, just what that might mean for other business models.
Yeah, interesting. I saw that, and we've got one. It's not officially a dark store, but a supermarket that only a few hundred meters down the road, and it's just opened. And it was supposed to be a normal standard, but they finished it during COVID, so it can be a dark store initially, just to take the pressure off everyone else.
Yeah.
But I saw that one online, and that was really interesting because I've set it out as a traditional supermarket, and the lean brain of me goes, there's got to be a more efficient way for staff to provide that. I want to do a work in motion study in that, and I reckon they've set it up wrong, but I just don't know what the solution is, because I don't think the old style is the best way when it's a dark store.
Correct, and that's the part of what got me thinking as well with it to start with, is the inefficiency of double handling the produce, because as you say, it's set up like a traditional supermarket. So that means someone is coming out and stacking the shelves. Now, they're not doing a full stack. I've noticed in the videos that stuff is still in its boxes on the shelf.
Yep.
But the shelf has been laid out like it would be in a store. And to me, that's, and then someone else is coming down and picking that off and putting it in a trolley for a custom order. I'm with you. That doesn't feel like the best way, but I don't know what the best way is.
No, I think if I took my lean thinking to it, I'd be asking the people who are the second in that chain is, if you had to lay this out, what would be the easier way for you? And I noticed it was quite a big store, so there's a lot of room. You know, yeah, can you? Yeah, and there's multiple levels, right? So what about one level that you're just shooting? Or yeah, I think you can. There's a better way. I reckon they could probably be about 30-40% off their full efficiency.
No, I totally agree. And yeah, don't know what the answers are. There's and there could be an evolution in play here. The other bit that got me was that the reason the reason a supermarket shelf is packed the way it is because of psychology.
Yes. Yep.
And there's a lot of research into that. It doesn't make sense to pack it in the same way if the customer's not seeing it.
Correct. Oh, right behind you on that one. Yeah. So interesting. Yeah, I'll watch that one with quite interested eyes on that one.
Move away from supermarkets because we could talk about them all day. Lego Serious Play. I know that's part of your toolkit. Tell me a little bit about what you do there. How that applies to where you work.
Yeah, so it's kind of an involvement. I've been playing with Lego for a few years now around lean. So I've got a simulation, and you go online, Google. There's lots of lean games that utilize Lego. It's just a fun way of tackling and teaching and educating. So Lego Serious Play is just a great tool to help organizations ask tough questions in a bit of an innovative way. So rather than sitting in a meeting and have post-it notes and it's kind of a workshop where people can sit back and relax and sometimes hide and let the dominating personalities take place. And we know all been through those meetings. We think they're free for all and open brainstorm, but really, a few, 20% make 80% of the decisions and ideas and all of that kind of stuff. So Lego Serious Play really makes everyone interact and everyone has an equal discussion, and they build up the picture. So it uses, so you build models with around metaphors. So depending on the question, so I was having a conversation this morning with someone, and it could be a marketing team. We talked about marketing. It could be, okay, so what are the biggest, build up me a model that represents one frustration that your customers have, and you build it, and then it builds onto a super model really that everyone can combine that story. So it storifies the problems that you have, so everyone has a role, a conversation going there. And because you're using Lego, because you're kind of having interactive, it's a bit of fun. But also there's a whole lot of psychology about why it works and that play-based stuff. We won't go into it today, but people forget that they're in that process and their barriers drop.
Yeah.
And they let and because when you build a metaphor, a model that tells your story, it's not wrong. It's your story. So everyone has that equal conversation. So it could be marketing, it could be what's aspects of a great team. So it could be used as a team reset, revaluing, re-standardize. What's the standards of the team? It could be it's used quite a lot around strategic planning. So what's one? And you build up the strategy. And the good thing around that is it's a 3D image. You take photos, you can write stories with it. And the models are bonkers, right? You see models and they look crazy. They don't make sense. But if you were part of that over a couple of hours of building that model up, you just need that photo.
Yep.
And straight away, you can tell that story.
And that's the key part to it as well, is it's the storytelling that happens within. I've done a session as a participant with Serious Play. And it's just that ability to tell a story and visualize it in any way. You're not trying to, and sorry, I'm just going to grab a prop for this one. You're not having to build the yellow submarine
no.
in these sessions. So you're not needing to follow instructions and a plan and everything else. You're telling a story, and therefore the how you articulate is the important part. It's something that I'm keen to bring into the technology planning conversation is the elements of Lego as well. And I've been exploring Serious Play, but it's more the point that Lego's great. I could have thrown a bunch of yellow, white, and red blocks at you and said, "Build me the yellow submarine," and I could have tried to buy all of this from Lego, but it came with an instruction and a roadmap on what to do, and then how to pivot if I didn't want the yellow sub anymore, what else I could do in there. That's where Lego for me has a lot of value into a business model as well. And I think Serious Play can deliver the same thing.
Yeah, I just as an exercise while we're in lockdown, got the household around, and okay, let's build your ideal holiday. So getting the kids involved, and the result is the combined model that we created was so different than what everyone else thought. And the components are what made up an ideal holiday. And so we had a couple of teenagers, a couple of 19-year-olds and 2 adults, right? And we all created this joint model. And some of the luxuries that one certain person was after we found that it wasn't actually really important by the time we got through to the final product. So it really helps people walk through and test what's important and what's not.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's a cool process.
Oh no, it definitely is, and like I say, I want to explore it a bit more, and we'll be holding that conversation offline. Rob, we'll wrap up now. For people that do want to talk to you, what's the best way to get in touch with you? I know you're fairly active on LinkedIn. Plexus Consulting, is it best to go through your website, through Facebook? What's the best way?
LinkedIn or website. So www.plexusconsulting.co.nz. It's just had a new refresh and relaunch, so it's reasonably up to date. Yep. So those are the two best ways to get hold of me. You don't have to go looking too hard to find me on LinkedIn either.
Nice. Hey Rob, been really good chatting. Look forward to catching up with you again soon. And
yes.
Stay safe and stay sane down there in the mighty Tron.
Thank you.
It's not as great as West Auckland, but hey, it'll be.
You're talking to a Westie, so I appreciate where you are as well.
Nice. Thanks, Rob.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan.